We look at this from the point of view of how are we going to focus on the process of bringing that light into our design spaces. And how does your original idea of that lighting design get impacted with the design inputs from these other vendors is also significant. But most importantly, we have to consider the people that inhabit the space and their health and well-being and what their experience of that space is.
I'm happy to invite on stage Linus Lopez from Lirio Lopez Lighting Design Consultants.
Before I start, this is something I normally do. All those who are practicing architects or interior designers in the hall, could I have a show of hands? Wow, that's amazing. All those who, as architects and interior designers, have used a lighting designer in their projects, please raise your hands. Brilliant. It's getting better. As she mentioned, 2 years ago when I did this in Delhi, the response was much sadder. In 2 years, things have changed because we have begun to understand the importance of light. And as a nation, as we go forward, constructing tens of thousands of square feet a day, encouraging people to use artificially lit spaces where they were normally using naturally lit spaces, the topic of light is very close to the topic of design, the topic of the built environment, and that's what we're going to discuss today. My name is Linus Lopez, and I am a forever disciple of the power of light. I am a member of the International Association of Lighting Designers and the Illuminating Engineering Society, and a proud member of the Lighting Designers Association of India. And the reason I mention this is that today I stand before you on behalf of this community of very creative, amazing people doing a wonderful job in the country of lighting our built environment. Today, I'm not here in my personal capacity, but I'm going to be talking about the role of a lighting design community in the process of the architectural design environment. I deploy this passion for light with my brother and my partner Lyle in Delhi. What is our passion? It is basically to use light to modulate a space, to transform it, as you have seen in these stunning examples in the two earlier presentations by Tripti and Harmeet, the power that light is able to bring to a space. We do this with a bunch of 14 enthusiastic colleagues in Delhi and in Jaipur, but we also have partners in Morocco and Austria, where we get a variety of inputs which are based on culture because light is about people. We look at this from the point of view of how are we going to focus on the process of bringing that light into our design spaces. We need to do it systematically, we need to do it with research, and we need to do it with an understanding of that research so that we can apply it at the right time to achieve what we wanted to start off achieving. In my last presentation, I dealt with dispelling some of the concepts about what is it that lighting designers do. Very often, we get told, I need to calculate the lux on my tabletop. Today, I'm here to tell you that lighting goes beyond illumination. It is something where we take, as you have seen in these examples earlier, you layer light with an understanding of the architecture behind it. Your response is not purely on the basis of what lux levels, how many lumens, what wattage do I consume. Your topics for discussion are the people that are involved, what is the architectural interpretation of that space, and how does it sit in the surroundings. What we are going to do today is take a little bit of a deep dive into the process that we follow in. We consider ourselves to be a process-driven design office with an informed design process to understand what it is that you're working with, who are the people that are going to use it, and to ask the right questions about how that space is going to be used. We need to find answers that suit the project, that suit the client, that suit the budget. In an emerging economy like India, this is a significant role that has to be also answered to: the location and the surroundings, also the available technology. But most importantly, we have to consider the people that inhabit the space and their health and well-being and what their experience of that space is. The second question I dealt with was, how do lighting designers work? And there are various stages in the project that we go through, the classic concept design stage, moving to the schematic design stage, and then the construction drawings. And at each point, we are sort of interacting with a whole host of design stakeholders, primarily led by the architect or the interior designer. The client represents his or her views on what they want to envisage in that space. But increasingly in today's building technology, we are dealing with a lot of very specialist consultants. These include MEP consultants, facade designers, security consultants. We also have AV consultants, right? And you might think, what do these people have to do with light? Today, and I'm sure there are a lot of my peers in the audience that will agree with me when we say that everything impacts your design. And this process of understanding what the various stakeholders bring to the project and how does your original idea of that lighting design get impacted with the design inputs from these other vendors is also significant. And when you bring in a professional to negotiate this, this is when you get the real benefit and the ability to hold the integrity of the original design. In order to do this, a lighting designer has to be a number of things, and we constantly switch hats, okay? And the reason that there is no line to segment how much percentage of time we do this is that this happens all the time, right? We switch from being artists. You saw this in the presentations earlier from the concept stage of how we dream about what we would like to see that space, to becoming an engineered-based solution when it comes to preparing construction drawings, working out details with the other consultants. But we also have to look at it from the point of view of a good accountant. How are we ensuring that our lighting design meets a budget that is linked to a master budget and work within that framework? We have to analyze at various points in time the impact in terms of cost benefit, in terms of impact, in terms of who gets priority in the negotiation of services. Today, light is also about health and well-being. And very often, a lighting designer is also taking on the role of a medical supervisor. The role of light on how we sleep, on how we perform, and everything to do with the bodily functions is now beginning to be understood more and more. And this research has to be integrated into the various typologies that we design for. But we are also being called upon increasingly in an environment that is being challenged every day to also think about how we design sustainably. And sometimes when I look at the fees that we get for this, I think we're also magicians, right? But most of all, the lighting designer is your friend in that design process, okay? And I'd like to explain the importance of why this context discussion, why this role of understanding how to implement a solution is important. We might think that our client is the person who is signing our check, and that to a large extent is true. But there are a whole host of people besides that person who's paying your check who's also impacted by your lighting design. And I choose to represent this with a series of graphs about how this changes from a private residence where there might be very few people involved, and all those people are directly impacted. But there is this small sliver of people that are not your primary client who also experience that space. And as you can see, as you move along to the commercial developments, to hospitality and fine dining, where you have chains of hotels who have a certain thought behind their hotel chain, they might give you a project brief that defines their needs. But in designing that space, we have to consider the needs of the other people that are going to be using the space. Right? That is a significant thought when you look at the diversity that we were discussing about earlier. Who are these people? How do they think? How do they perceive? And what do they perceive? This discussion can go on, but I can, by virtue of an example, talk about a restaurant that we lit many years ago, where the impact of color when it first came out was one of the key desires of the owners. And they said, we want to get this high-impact space with color for our artifacts. But it is a restaurant where the primary experience is about food. And if you had a magenta-colored dish of pasta placed in front of you, would it really be that exciting? So you have to understand that you limit your light color to where it creates the maximum impact, but remove it from where your primary source, your primary focus of that design, which is food, is color-free, and you get a true experience of what you're eating. There is also the discussion about when to involve a lighting designer. And although there are many stages in the project, as you involve a lighting designer later on, the ability of his or her influence to that project goes down, right? There is this sweet spot, which is probably somewhere early in that concept stage, where you're able to bring on that expertise and integrate that into your design. There are many words to describe the many things that we think about when we design with light. And some of these words can end up being a little confusing. But today I want to talk about some of them and how they impact our process of design. And although there may be various stages in which these thoughts come about, their impact and their prioritization at these various stages is important. When you start with design, and you look at not just the building envelope, not just the light power density, but you see in the building envelope how to integrate natural light into your artificially lit spaces. You also have to look at the materials that are being used and to understand how light pollution can be controlled in that designed environment. But there is also technology. As a lighting designer, you might start with the discussions about lux, but without understanding the concept of melanopic lux, you will be very hard pushed to design a comfortable space for working. You also have to look at the sustainability response. What happens to our discussions about circular economy in that selection of the fixture? What role are we playing to design sustainably as lighting designers? Is luminance as important as illuminance? And to me, that answer is a resounding yes. It's not just the lux level, but the play of contrasts within the space that actually bring to light the space. And during the stage of implementation, this is of particular significance because this is the time you are challenged the most. You are knuckle-dustered into budgets. You are constantly asked, what is the lux level? But you have to hold on to negotiate with an installer, a supplier, a manufacturer, trade laws that forbid the input of certain materials into the country, and you deal with all of this with aplomb, holding on to that design at all costs through the stages in the project. But these may be just words, and today I would like to use the examples of hard projects that lighting designers in India, practicing here, coming from various fields of architecture and interior design, like Tripti, like Kanchan, coming from backgrounds of engineering, like Harmeet, like myself. We have talented lighting designers all over India today doing work in various typologies. And I'm going to take you through some of their projects to discuss how these various stages have sort of impacted the final design of that project. Lighting heritage is probably the only typology where it makes sense to appoint the lighting designer after project completion. But here, it's the knowledge of context of place, the significance in the local culture, and balancing light levels to preserve, yet enhance. Control the level of intervention, work closely with conservation specialists, and extend this architectural narrative into our city nightscapes. Okay, this is an example in Mumbai. It is also about working at the scale of a city. Lighting interventions here start with an understanding of genus loci, scale, circulation patterns, and they continue into working utilization schedules that govern control and how sleep patterns are affected. In sharp contrast, on the topic of scale, you have lighting for personal residences, where homes that begin with calibrating the usefulness of latest technologies with budgets and function, to chaperoning individual taste and style of a variety of residents. In India, we deal with 3 generations in a single house. Lighting in residences today is a competitive combination of aspiration and budget management, and debunking certain market myths about human-centric lighting and the benefits. Restaurants, nightclubs, and fine dining, all these entail a completely different process. The best ones emerge when all the stakeholders are thinking like one. Matching of materials, thematic combinations, and where you're constantly exploring new boundaries of creativity, not just technology for technology's sake, but understanding how to match controls with light to complement the food, the drink, or the entertainment. The challenge of hotels as continuously operating large homes, right? But these are multifunctional units in a single space, so you cannot just design for one thing. So a typical example is to design the facade of a hotel while taking into account light pollution to control the night sky pollution, but also ensuring that a person gets a peaceful sleep at night, because that's what they've checked into the hotel for. It is also about life cycle and value engineering, because hotels are one of our biggest consumers of materials. Thematically, too, hospitality is about the detailed dialogue about selection of decorative luminaires, which often comes with some level of customization, as you saw Harmeet explain, which extends beyond just an idea in your head or a 2D sketch. It needs to go into active prototyping and testing for materials and colors. Gone are the days when offices were laid out with grids of general lighting, assuming a certain specific lux level with an equally specific uniformity. Today, office spaces work with this concept of 3-30-300, where 3 and 30 is to do with energy and real estate, but 300 is your human resource. If you're spending on your human resource, what are you giving them as working environments for 8 to 10 hours a day? Controlling the artificial light with the natural light to allow views of the outside. Banquet halls, theaters, museums, auditoriums, all these need to be designed with a great deal of flexibility, because in each space, they get used in a variety of different ways. And we have to understand the creative use of technology in order to achieve some of these flexibilities in design. And in a nation marching ahead at a furious pace where diversity is our strength and people are our greatest resource, we must find the space, the energy, and the time to intelligently design our lit environments to cater to this unique, diverse resource, human beings. And I would like to end with a quote from Victor Papanek's amazing and very relatable book called Ecology and Ethics in Design and Architecture. When we become hired guns of greed-driven corporations, we are driven to conform. If we generate status kitsch for a jaded elite and allow ourselves to become media celebrities, we merely perform. When we twist design to reflect the navel-gazing of the market research companies, we deform. But when our designs are succinct statements of purpose, easy to understand, use, maintain, and repair, long-lasting, recyclable, and benign to the environment, we inform. And if we design with harmony and balance in mind, working for the good of other members of our society, we reform. Thank you.